Okay, Tom, you think we have a quorum, do you?
Yeah, it looks like we have 8 members here.
We have eight, okay, and we have 12 members altogether, so we're ready to go. So I'll call the Bond Oversight Committee of the Lane Community College to order for our 6 o'clock meeting tonight. Well, let's see, who do we have as guests? Uh,
We
Tammy
have
and Ryan, sorry?
Tanner Perrine from Lease Crutcher Lewis is our guest.
Okay. Oh, that's right, okay. The print on my computer is pretty small for names, so forgive me if I don't get your name correctly. Um, the first item of business is our agenda, excuse me, our minutes from the last meeting. I've had a chance to look at them. I hope other people have. Is it in order for me to ask for additions or corrections? I think it is. So are there any additions or corrections to the minutes from last time? Or can we go ahead to approve them? If I don't get any comment, I'll assume they're ready. Are there any objections to the approval of the minutes? If so, signal that. If you're not objecting, I'm going to assume you're happy with them and that they're approved. All right, so the minutes are approved. Let's go on. Preliminary items. I'm supposed to call the meeting to order. I think I did that. And I'm supposed to remind you that not to use the Zoom chat for meeting business because it's not visible to the public during the meeting. So I take it that that means this is for side conversations that don't have anything to do with the meeting, because everything in the meeting needs to be part of the public record. And I think I already approved the minutes, didn't I? Review and approve June special meeting minutes. That was our short meeting, and it didn't have much to it. Is the president here?
She
I
wasn't
don't-
able to make it tonight, Phil, but
is it-
I'm going to go
is-
ahead and give the opening remarks.
Great, please go ahead.
Yeah,
Is it Jennifer? Yes, please.
yes. Hi, I'm Jennifer Hayward. I'm the Associate Vice President for Facilities and Public Safety. And I've attended all of these meetings, but I've kind of sat in the background and not talked much. But today I'm excited to take the opportunity to make some opening remarks. And I'm going to share my screen and show my slideshow. Oops, started on the wrong page. Okay. So the kind of the purpose of the opening remarks were we received quite a few information requests and questions over the last 3 to 6 months, and we have, I think, answered them all with this meeting, with the information provided for this meeting, but there were a few things that I wanted to go into a little bit more detail about. A couple of the questions were about efficiency. How do we know we're being efficient? So this slide shows you that the talks about our efficiency. So typical capital construction administrative expenses are about 5%, and that's the overhead for your staff to implement the projects and the few materials and supplies that they need to operate their office. 4J's $319 million bond is operating at a 5% administrative expense, and LCC's bond administrative expense is very lean. We're doing it with 3%. And we're able to do that because we have extremely dedicated, hardworking, and experienced and knowledgeable staff. And we also have great support from the college administration, the president, and her cabinet. The bond program
Excuse me
operates.
just a moment. Excuse me just a
Yes.
moment. I've got a hand up from Terry. Terry,
Okay.
did you have a question?
Yeah, I did regarding the 3% administrative expenses. Are those included in the expenses that were given to us? I mean, it's about $4.8 million. So is that money is it included in the expenses that we see reported every report?
Yes. And I can
Okay.
show you that when we get there.
Okay.
I can point that
just
out.
wanted to know if
It
that
is.
included the vendors plus the administrative expenses. Okay,
It's
thank
there.
you.
Yeah. I also just wanted to let you know that LCC's facilities department and the bond as part of facilities is also very lean. The last part of this slide shows how much community colleges in Oregon spend on facilities as a percent of their overall budget. So the first 7 colleges are the 7 largest community colleges in Oregon. You can see that they all spend a higher percent on facilities than Lane Community College, which is 1.29%. The only one of the 17 community colleges that spends less on facilities is Tillamook Bay Community College. And the reason why LCC is able to do this is, again, extremely hardworking and knowledgeable, dedicated staff, but also because of the great support that we get from our community. Our community passes bonds because they support us, and we're able to use that money to help us keep our facilities maintained to a certain extent so that the college can focus a higher percent of its money on programming and services directly for students. The other thing I just wanted to mention here is that it's taken us a while to get you responses to some of your information requests. We haven't been as timely with them as we wish we were, and probably you wish we were. And I apologize for that, but I just wanted to let people know that we are operating with very lean administrative overhead, and sometimes the consequence of that is a less timely response as we're trying to focus on implementing projects and spending as much as possible on the actual projects rather than administrative expenses. So thank you for that, for considering that. There was also some back and forth email about the Bond Oversight Committee charter, and we do have some new members. So I think many of us were thinking that it would be a good time to review that. And this slide shows, next slide. This slide shows our charter language. The first half is the Bond Oversight Committee is charged with reviewing progress on projects detailed in the bond measure that passed in May 2020. And these are a couple of the documents that you were sent late, about 10 minutes before the meeting, but you should have them in your inbox now. And I'm not going to go through these in a lot of detail because I don't have a lot of time for this presentation, but you can look at this later and it shows exactly what we told the community we would do, and the specific language is highlighted in yellow here, that we said we would construct, improve, and address safety and technology needs, and there are all these specific things listed. And then also this crosswalk you were emailed about 10 minutes before the meeting. This shows all of that language that you just looked at from the voters pamphlet listed here. And then it shows each of the LCC projects that go with that language. So what did we do to repair, construct and improve facilities? We replaced the Building 6 roof. We did parking lot maintenance, et cetera, et cetera. So it's just showing you all the projects under each thing. And again, the purpose of this presentation isn't to go over that in a lot of detail, but you can look at it later and send us questions if you have any. And we could make it a longer agenda item at a future meeting if you'd like.
Yeah, I think given the timing, it would be great to give people a chance to review it. And if there are questions, address them directly to you or put them on the agenda for the next meeting. That would be great. Thank you.
Good idea. Thank you.
I think it's important to also note that that crosswalk is something that we've been presenting to the board of the last several months. So there you can also, I know Amy sends out board items. You can also hear the discussion about that crosswalk if you want to take a moment to listen to the board meeting, a few sections of the board meetings that have been discussing it, and that'll be coming up at the next board meeting as well.
And all of that's recorded. People can listen to the recording anytime.
Yeah.
Yes, thank you.
The second part of the Bond Oversight Committee charter is the committee shall review progress and monitor spending and schedules. So that is meant to say that if many of you on this committee have knowledge of the construction industry because that's how we partially recruited people. So if in your opinion, it's taking us way too long to do a project, if it's the type of project that we should be getting done in 2 years for design and construction, but it's taking us 4, 5, 6 years, be concerned. If, we set, if we're spending most of the bond money on one little thing and you feel that we're not saving enough money to get the other things on the list done, then those are the kinds of things you would want to be concerned about and report to the board about. Tom gives you a lot of information in his reports. So when he puts a yellow which means monitoring on his quarterly report regarding schedule or budget, that doesn't mean that there's a major big concern that we're not going to get the project done in a timely manner or the bond budget's going to be way out of whack. All that means is something isn't going 100% exactly how he had planned it out, and he's monitoring it. And he's just monitoring it to make sure it does stay on track. So I just wanted to kind of give a little bit of context to what Tom's yellow monitoring means versus what kinds of big things that the Bond Oversight Committee should be watching out for and reporting to the board. And if you do have concerns, obviously you should report those to the board, but also please let us know so we can try to address those too. Another thing that came up in the information request that I wanted to go over is a discussion about final prioritization or prioritization of final bond projects. And I wanted to let the committee know that the board did review that the administration prepared for the board, and the board reviewed a list of final project prioritizations at their October 9th meeting. They did a first reading and they're going to be doing a second reading and most likely vote on those final project priorities at their November 6th meeting. And I'll go ahead and click on this document that Amy also did email you about 10 minutes before this meeting. So I apologize you didn't get it earlier, but you have it now. This document is a simplified version of the quarterly report that Tom sends you. So it shows the completed items here, the projects in process here, and then the proposed final projects with priorities here. So just to let you know, these are the final remaining projects that the board is considering. There were also some questions about how do we effectively integrate apprentices into our projects and how do we maximize the use of local contractors. I thought it would be interesting for you to hear from one of our major general contractors who has implemented 2 of our big bond projects. That's Lise Crutcher Lewis, and Tanner Perrine is here tonight to talk about these things. And Lise Crutcher Lewis is a great company who's doing a really good job with these things, but the other general contractors that we've been using are also doing similar things. So what you hear from Tanner is what the other contractors are doing. But I thought it would be interesting for you all to hear directly from a contractor about what they're doing to implement these things. The third bullet here, we got some feedback asking if we could do a better job explaining construction terminology, procedures, processes, public procurement laws. So I just have a couple more slides, but and I'm going a little bit over time. But if there's time at the end of the meeting, I'd like to talk about what kinds of other informational presentations would be helpful, and maybe you could send me some email feedback later. The last thing is we had some information requests about using some different terminology for our quarterly report, actual cost, estimate to completion, and budget under over. And we didn't change our quarterly report. We wanted to keep that as is, but this slide shows what we mean when we say expenditures. That's the same as actual cost. remaining budget allocation. That's the same as estimate to complete. And then we don't have a budget under over column here, but if we did, it would equal 0 because any small remaining budgets, because we are estimating budgets to be exactly right. And any small remaining budgets at the end of a project are going to be reallocated according to the board's priorities for remaining projects. And that's the end of my presentation. Thank you.
That's great. Should we entertain questions now? There's a lot to absorb in this material, especially the new material. And my suggestion is that people review it and bring questions as has been happening in the interim before the next meeting. Is that acceptable to people at this point? Okay, now please, Wendy, yes, you're muted.
Should we ask a question now or should we wait till
Sure.
the end?
Go ahead.
Because I
Yeah.
know I listened to the last executive session on the baseball field, and then I was at the board meeting on October 9th, and I wasn't, I've just been about less than a year on this committee, but I'm just wondering, so the baseball field was on the original bond. I guess I'm wondering what the sense is that do you think the board will pass it and it was in the original bond? So I'm hoping we can get that move forward is my hope, and just wondering where that's at or what your opinions are.
Some of the bond oversight committee members don't have as much context about this as you do, so I'll just give a little bit, which is that the Board of Education has been some members of the Board of Education have expressed concerns with whether we have an artificial turf field or a natural grass field with our baseball field. But so that's really what the conversation is about. But my sense is that the board is supportive of baseball and having a baseball field. Yeah.
And that was on the original presentation to the public before passing the bond measure. Is that right?
It wasn't in the exact voters pamphlet language, but it was in the original bond plan under the category of deferred maintenance, improving aging facilities.
Okay. So the board has the ability to either approve or not approve this and still be within the bond indenture. Yeah, okay. Thank you. And all right. It isn't really in our purview to determine what projects the board ought to authorize, but it's always useful to know what they're planning, what they're thinking about. Thank you. That's helpful. Wendy, did you have another question?
I think that answered it. I'm just wondering what it said. So I think you answered that, but it was in the original bond. You said to implement, really to upgrade aging fields, right?
It wasn't specifically in the voters pamphlet language, but it was in the kind of behind the scenes documents that weren't provided to the voters. It was in the behind the scenes detail.
Right. And my suspicion is that means that the board isn't bound to do it. That specific project, they're going to be working on the general projects anyway. Of course, if you do a artificial turf field, you spend more money up front and less money on maintenance, and so it's a trade-off, and that's not really, I think, within our purview. Are there other questions?
I
Okay.
had, Phil,
Please.
I'm sorry.
Terry, go.
Yeah, I've got some questions, but I think for the most part, I'm going to wait until after the reports. I like to save them. Maybe they'll be answered. The only thing that I would say is, Jennifer, you and I had a conversation about the estimate to completion. And I will still strongly disagree that what you're calling estimate to completion is not an estimate to completion. That is nothing more than a percent contracted. What were expenditures and encumbrances, which are what we're obligated to spend is not the estimate to completion in a normal project. And Bill, I know, I see you're on there. I don't know if you would like to give anything on that, but that is not estimate to completion. And that's where I'm still having a major issue with the numbers. Even with that being said, the numbers on the spreadsheet don't add up, even if you use that, because we've got, for example, I think the building 32 shows there's, $88,000 remaining, but the percent contracted is at 100%. So which is it? Is it either, is it going to be, those numbers just don't add up to me.
Well, we've contracted 100%, but we still have $88,000 encumbered that we still need to pay out.
Well, but that's not what it says. If you look at it, it says that the expense and encumbrances is 24,861,000,
So-
which if you subtract that, it comes up with 88,000. So
So then it would say that estimate to complete is 88,000 under budget.
That's what I'd interpret that to mean. So that means you've got money that you could, assuming that this thing works the way looks like it is now, there will be dollars left over to be spent on something else.
Could be spent on something else, or we could look at it to increase some scope to buy additional furnishings or equipment or something of that nature. And that's what we
Right.
discuss, as we come down.
yeah, and
And-
that's what I expect it to be too. But what I'm saying is that then that column though that says percent contracted says it's 100%. Well, but that's not really what you've been using it for and all the others. The other things you're saying that it's just the expense plus encumbrances subtracted from the allocated budget, which in every other case down there, most about, those are the correct percentages for that. But this one is not showing that. So it's a little
Probably a
confusing.
rounding detail. It's probably 99 point.
Well, no, it's about 96%. It's about 4% of the, I believe. But I just wanted to confirm what that column that you say is percent contracted means. Does it mean percent contracted, or does it mean, as Jennifer was saying, well, that is our, estimate to completion. That again, it doesn't, I'm not sure what that is.
So Terry, are you suggesting that they're using the same term to mean different things?
Well, it appears that
Depending
way.
on what the project is, or are you saying something else?
No, that's exactly what I'm saying, is that in
Okay.
most cases, it is just a simple math of taking the allocated budget and then taking that column that says expenses and encumbrances, so I'm just not sure what it means, because it doesn't mean the same on every project. But I'll go back to the same thing, and I'll that we're still, I look back at what, is in our, the BOC charter, and it says monitor bond spending and schedules. I don't know how you can monitor a schedule if you don't know at what stage is that project completed? Are we at 99% of the project completed? I'm not talking about the money. I'm talking about in the schedule itself. Are we 100%, 96%? Because then you can compare where you're at and then knowing what the estimate to completion is, whether you're going to be over or under budget. And we don't have that information. We don't know on any project, where are we at, not financially to the budget, but where are we at in completing the project? Because again, it's hard without having that information. It's really difficult to know whether we're going to be over or under budget if we don't know how much we project it's going to cost us to finish this project. Bill, you're sitting there. I want you to speak up a little. I know what your experience is.
I'm going to go along with this this discussion until perhaps further on to make a comment, partially because I'm so new to the committee and I want to hear Tom describe this as well. I do understand the things that you've been saying.
All right,
Okay, well, I'll reserve any other comments for later after the.
yeah, thanks, Terry. I appreciate
Thank you.
that.
Yeah.
Yeah, as someone who's not involved in the contracting business, this sometimes is difficult to follow, but I suspect that what's happening with this particular project is that the total project, as described to the contractor, is expected to leave an amount of money unspent because we overestimated what the cost was going to be originally. And that money then can go for the things that would be added on or for a different project. Tom, is that a reasonable summary of where we are on that particular project?
I would agree with that. And I think when you look at the quarterly report, I did add, project start and finish date. Different projects are a little different. Tanner here, I mean, for him on the ITech project right now, he, contractually substantial completion is, where are you at? You're about 10 days left, I think, plus a year in warranty. And so I think, how do we define the end of a project? A little different than perhaps the end of a project in a software situation or a project management in a business sense, often where your project kind of closes out and moves on. A construction contract carries on for a long time, and the contractor's obligated for at least a year to deal with things, and typically they take a little longer than that to get it all done. When you look at it, the health professions building, while we've had occupancy since the summer, I've got that listed as a project finished in December 24. So coming up in a few months.
Tom, could I ask you a question? So when you're thinking about completion, are you thinking substantial completion, final completion?
I look beyond substantial completion. I look at pretty much a full occupancy or use of it in the case of a building.
But in a lot of cases, that's substantial completion, and then there are odds and ends that we all know take months, a year, or sometimes longer than a year to complete.
And some of that is, we're also continuing to buy things like additional furniture, fitting out equipment because it becomes available, or is found as a need as they move into a building where it wasn't anticipated necessarily in the scope.
So here's a question. Might there be some use in perhaps even creating an additional column that just talks about substantial completion, meaning when you can get beneficial occupancy? So you're using the building, knowing that there's more to occur.
Yeah.
But at least in terms of the public, the building's being used.
Yeah. Let's talk about that a little later when we get to the quarterly report, because it applies really well in some places and not so well in the others. But I also know we have an agenda item for others, so let's try and keep in tune with the agenda.
Sure.
Yeah, thank you. Are we ready to go on? And if so, where are we on this agenda? I'm a little confused at this point.
Information reports. So that is just responses to information report or information requests were provided. And this is just if anybody has any questions or wants to follow up on anything in particular.
Right.
I do have a question about the color.
Bill, go ahead.
Yeah, it's about the color coding, and help me out here. In one place I believe I read that it's not completely objective, and I was wondering what would it take to have objective criteria, or set of metrics for this color coding?
Varies from project to project.
Okay.
And I should say initiative to initiative, because they're not individual. This is a budget breakdown. It doesn't necessarily apply directly to a project. So, for instance, for the IT initiatives, classroom projects, that is intended to take a long time. We do them a few classrooms at a time each term. We take a few offline, upgrade them. A long-term project.
Okay.
It's unlike perhaps when you look at 4J, the school district that is saying, we're going to do this project as a school. We're going to renovate this school. We have a broader range of scope of projects, things like replacing security cameras. Sometimes it's a big chunk, and we're kind of carrying on with smaller pieces as we adjust to it, or find a specific need that we know that there's more in there, or we're trying to get other work done first to make sure we need it.
Bill's question is,
You're flying the plane while you build it.
Oh, yeah. Sometimes designing the plane while I'm flying it.
Oh, you build it. Okay.
Mhm.
All right. You can't
Bill's-
take all the classrooms out of service at the same time because you need to use them.
Yeah.
No, I understand that explanation for that type of project that's
Yeah.
ongoing and has multiple stages.
So,
Bill's question is very similar to Terry's comment/question about, having a percent completed column in the spreadsheet. And I will say that Tom and I did have very extensive and in-depth conversations about whether we could provide the more objective data rather than using this objective color system. And what we talked about is a construction project like of the size of the health professions building is maybe 10 or 12 different contracts. There's the design contract, the construction contract, there's the commissioning contract, there's the surveying contract, various testing contracts, furniture. I mean, there's a lot, like I said, 10 to 12 different contracts, and none of them are a per hour contract where they're saying, we will get this work done at this cost and this amount of hours. So contractors bill us each month based on how much work they've gotten done that month, but it's not really based on a percentage. So we don't have objective information really to be able to provide you with objective information. We have our experience from being construction project managers for 20 plus years, and we've also hired a third party construction project management company that's helped oversee bond programs for other colleges and universities in the state. And they're helping us provide oversight to make sure that things are going along correctly. But it's difficult for us to put together exact objective percentages for that reason.
Okay. I suspect this looks like an ongoing conversation to me. Is it okay for us to go on like now, or do members want to talk about this issue some more right now? Okay, let's go ahead. Tom, help me. Where are we on our agenda? Are we down to the Q&A with the contractor?
I think so. Yes. So,
Okay. All right. Do you want to introduce?
yeah, I'll introduce Tanner Perrine. He's with Lease Crutcher Lewis. Lease Crutcher Lewis has done over the decades here, has done a lot of projects on the campus here. Before I came up for this bond, they were the contractor for the Florence project. And they've also then they followed up to be doing the ITech building along with the related projects around that. So they were chosen through an RFP process for a CMGC on both of those. On both of those, I will say one of the big pieces that they've been very active in and shown success with is addressing the CBA. Not all the contractors that respond really gave very good answers to that. And with that, I'll let Tanner go from there. And
Before you do, tell us again what CPA means.
the CBA is
Collective bargaining agreement.
Well,
no,
community benefits
community
agreement.
benefits agreement. Sorry.
Community benefits agreement, thank you.
Community, which the board put together here and suggested, you know, they wanted the bond funds to be invested in the community as much as possible, along with
Thank
some
you.
things there. So with that, let's try it again, Tanner.
Okay, please, go ahead.
Yeah, and feel free to stop me at any point in time too. So thanks for having me. But yeah, one of our key focuses as a contractor is to really build local businesses, individuals around us to support our business, right? Because as a general contractor, we also are a builder. So we employ carpenters on our job sites that work for Lee Scratcher Lewis. But the rest of our business, 80% of our business is subcontracted out. And so we really want the rest of the trades to be built up, trained, to be given a set of skills that they can go out and be marketable in our communities and our marketplace. And so the iTech building is one of those key buildings that's really going to help train those trades for the next future decade plus. And we're really happy to be part of this. So just some like high level stats here. Forgive me, I'm looking on my phone at our stats, but local participation, Lane County has $22 million worth of work on the iTech building alone. Whereas if you look at Oregon, all the other companies that are in Oregon but not in Lane County, that's another $11 million worth of work. And so that's about 33% that is local to Lane County, that is actually local trade contractors and supporting families and individuals that are working here. So that is a huge metric. And then one other, the living wage, 100% of our subcontractors are paying living wages. So that's that community benefits agreement that Tom and Jennifer mentioned. 87% of our trades on the iTech building are training their staff with the OSHA 10. And so that's all around safety, training our staff to work safely. That's 87% of all of the subcontractors. I would say 100% of the major subcontractors are meeting that. So you might have like a cleaning subcontractor, which I would say doesn't fall into the major subcontracting category, right? That might not be requiring all of their individuals are OSHA 10 certified. So for everybody on the call, OSHA 10 is a fairly rigorous safety program that makes it's 10 hours of in-depth classroom time over several weeks to get your OSHA 10 certification, and it's designed to just help individuals really understand what goes on a construction site and to interact with everything they might deal with in a safe manner. So it's a pretty rigorous process, and for employers to do that, it's a pretty costly program to put their folks through. And so it's really incredible that we have 87% of all of our trades and 100% of our major trades doing that. And then on top of that, like the apprenticeship program is one that we definitely embrace. So at Lee Scratcher Lewis, we employ contractors. Like I said earlier, we have had 4 carpenter apprentices on the project for the duration of the project. That was way out when we started. I don't know, what was that, Tom, a year ago when we started?
Year and a half ago.
Ish. Okay. A year and a half ago. Time flies when we're having fun. To where those carpenters are out there doing layouts, right? They're setting formworks for the foundations of the building. Those carpenter apprentices are still there today. And really, we at Lewis pair those apprentices with a journeyman carpenter to teach them the tricks of the trade all the way through the building process. So they're not given a lesser job to where they're just running a cut station or they're running back and forth from the tool shed and grabbing the real carpenters a hammer, right? They're given actual jobs that a carpenter would do with a mentor working there with them to really train them up. And I would say of the major subcontractors we have on the job site too, all major subcontractors are utilizing apprenticeship as well. One of our biggest subcontractors on the job site right now is using 50% apprenticeship rates, which is really incredible. I mean, that's every apprentice to every journeyman working side by side with each other. So that's incredible to see. And then, some of the more technical trades like the electricians out there, they've had 5 apprentices on the job site, and they're really working in a progressive way to learn the job. So they're running back and forth getting materials for folks, and then they're helping assemble those materials. And then the next stage, after they've done that for several months, they're coming back and they're then installing those materials while the next apprentice that's behind them is coming up. And they're all using what we call the buddy system to really make sure that these folks are getting well-rounded to where when they turn out and they journey out, they're able to just hit the job sites on any job site across our country and have the skills that they need to be successful. So another thing that we do specifically at Lease Crutcher Lewis is really trying to dive in and understand the minority and disadvantaged businesses that we have in our region to make sure that they have a voice. And we know we're not putting out bid packages for $100 million project when the subcontractors can only support a $5 million package, right? We don't want to make a project seem like a mountain that they can't traverse, right? They can't climb. And so we have a lot of outreach events down here throughout the year designed to meet those businesses in our communities and understand what they need and what they want to really be successful and thrive. And so I'm pleased to announce that we have several of those businesses on the iTech project too, and we're actually in conversations with several of those on other projects that are not Lane Community College projects, but also within the Eugene Springfield area that we're going to be signing up those trade partners for contracts. And that's just understanding, hey, do you need paid biweekly so you can make payroll to pay your people? Do you need a relaxation on insurance requirements, right? Because in this day in society, we have to be able to be cognizant of that. And those spark really good conversations for Tom and Jennifer and I to really look at like, hey, do we really want our window blinds manufacturer and installer to have a $10 million liability policy when they have a $50,000 contract? Let's work with them to make sure that there's not a barrier to entry right out of the gate. And so, sorry, I've rambled on a lot. So looking forward to questions, but that's really what we're doing. And it's really making sure that we're understanding the market, meeting the people that are providing the goods and services that we want to support our projects, and making sure that we're not just systemically having a barrier there for them to entry. So yeah, happy to take questions now, or if I didn't cover anything, throw it at me.
Let me hit one first. It sounds like you're saying that you try to package the contracts that you're offering to the capacities of these small businesses so that they actually have the opportunity to bid on them and do the work. Did I understand that correctly? Yeah, absolutely. If it makes sense for the project, here's a great example of that, Phil. So we've had a project on a housing job down here that the casework contract, right, could have been let out to one company to do everything. There was a local vendor that just does countertops. They don't do the boxes, the cabinets, the drawers. They just do countertops. So we split it up and said, okay, anybody that's interested in building the casework, you're just going to do the casework, not countertops. And then we let out a package for the countertops. And I'm pleased to say that we have 2 subcontractors doing that. We help them mesh their shop drawings together to make sure everything fits together and is good when it's installed. But yes, that's a way to give local business that did not have the capacity to do all the boxes and the drawers, but can do the countertops. So yeah, exactly right. Thank you. Other questions? And thank you very much for the presentation. I appreciate it. Yeah. Other questions? This was easy. I didn't even have to have a PowerPoint. Well, you're
Thanks,
really
Tanner.
good if you can get through this group without more questions. That's great.
I
Um,
want to, this is Alan. I want to butt in just for a second and thank,
Please, Alan, yes.
I just want to thank Tanner. I managed to get the tour of your latest building, and every worker I met was courteous, very knowledgeable, and just blew my mind in terms of seeing what you're doing and what you're pulling off. So thanks a lot for being there for us.
Thank you. That's great. It's great to hear.
Can I second that? I had the same experience the other day. It was marvelous, and I think you're going to get people going into the trades who will come partly because this building is so attractive.
Hmm. I'm hoping my daughter's going to be one of them in about 5 years from now that's going to go through this building. So really looking forward to that. So
It was one of the early goals, and I know Tanner heard that very early on, heard it at the interview or before the interviews, because that was at the pre-submittal conference for contractors, that was part of the intent, that our contractors are very hungry for labor, for a workforce.
mhm.
And it all fits together, doesn't it? What I'm hearing you say is that you're not only doing this construction work really well, but you're also doing it in a way that furthers the primary purpose of Lane Community College, which is to get people educated and practiced to actually do successful work in our community. And in this case, it's on the trades. In other cases, it would be something else.
Mhm.
So, I mean, it all fits together. While you're building the building, you're also training people to build the other buildings that we're going to need down the road, or to make repairs to my old house, for example.
That's exactly right. I mean, years ago when we did building 30, that was, further back in my career, but I can say, I just had a dentist appointment the other day that was with somebody that went through the dental program there. And so, everything that we do at LCC, is absolutely comes full circle at some point in our community, in our world. And it's really cool to see. And this one just happens to be one that touches the construction industry. That's my trade, right? But every student that goes through LCC, we interact with, and sometimes we don't even realize it. So it's really cool to see.
So Tom, it's and Jennifer, we're busy carrying out our purpose at the same time as we're expanding the capacity to do that with these new buildings. It struck me as he was talking that that's the case. Any other questions for Tanner? Thank you so much. We really appreciate the update that you've given us today.
Yeah, nope. Happy to be here. And with that, I'm going to sign off and go grab my daughters, and we'll hopefully see all of you at the celebration.
Great. Thank you so much. And we appreciate it again.
Yep. Thank you.
Design and construction updates, managers update.
Yeah, so that's me, and I don't think I want to go through all of it. I think the big one is looking at the health professions building, which has been talked about a little bit here. We did have a little setback.
Yeah.
The week before, we were hoping to invite students, we intended to invite students in. We had a water leak. Unfortunate thing, but was discovered, was addressed very quickly. We're diving into it. We're already back, putting things back together. We're fortunate enough that from the academic side, the areas that were damaged were general classrooms, some offices, and the two labs, the dental labs that were damaged, we were able to move back to the existing labs where they were just supposed to move out of. And we are looking at being able to get both of them in by the end of this term. So for the start of the next term, possibly before that, but we're also working with the academics there, because changing locations also has its own problems as you're trying to teach. So we're most likely going to be bringing everybody back in at midterm there. So that's an unfortunate piece, but I think it also speaks to the quality of the teams we've put together. You know, Jennifer talked about our facilities team that came together, the contractor stepped up. We had, the facilities team responded, our public safety that was called as soon as somebody saw water on the floor, came in and shut off the water right away. While others were coming in, we were able to get our on-call contractor that we have for these types of water and fire emergencies. They were out right away that same afternoon to start drying things out, get rid of the water. Our general contractor dove in, was out here on a Sunday afternoon helping to mop and squeegee things and take care of things, as well as a bunch of our staff. By Monday morning, we had fans blowing, things sectioned off, and we're working on a plan to put things back together, which we're putting drywall back together, ordering new materials that were damaged. So I'm really impressed with the response. It is. And so when you get to, when is a project over? Buildings are things that keep on giving.
Tom, you may have mentioned this in the report, and I can't remember. Could you describe what the nature of the leak was, and if you know now what might have caused it?
It was there in the dental lab. In one of it, they have a tool that they use to trim down dental molds, and it's a wet grinder, and it had a connection much like your ice maker for your refrigerator does, and somewhere over the weekend, it came undone. It had been done earlier in the week, held for multiple days, and somewhere over the weekend, one of them came undone. How exactly that happened, that's
Sure,
beyond
sure.
but that was it. It, little 1/4-inch fitting under pressure, and it probably happened sometime Saturday, and it was discovered Sunday afternoon. So water spewing on your floor on the 3rd floor, of course, of the building. And it isolated to that one side of the building, flowed down, and from there. Wendy, I see your hand up.
Yeah, Wendy, please.
I'm just assuming LCC won't be liable for any of the damage, or any of the costs would be covered because.
Yeah, that is the assumption. We've turned it into our insurance company, but and yes, we've informed everybody, but that's up to our insurance company to chase after others. They'll make sure they've been very good to work with as well, to make sure we're put back together whole as quickly as possible, including appropriate overtime where it made sense and things like that, so that we could get people working over this last weekend, for instance, and we're working, the crews are coming in at 5 a.m. to work to get in 3 hours in the morning before students show up. And then they move into areas that are less, farther away. So a lot of those kind of things have been very closely done.
Was that machine actually in use, or had it just been installed?
It had been installed, ready for use. It was ready for students to show up and start using. We had, I think there are 10 or 12 of them that were in the room, and one of them something happened to. I'm so glad that it happened before a student had a chance to use it for a day, or even a faculty member go in and try and adjust things, because it happened, and we'll take care of it. And I would hate to think a student came back and heard that one of their pieces, whether it was theirs or not, that happened, and it could have been. So I'm very fortunate on that.
Tom, what
Any
was
other
the
questions
dollar
on that?
value?
What?
What was the dollar value of the damage? You said you
We're
turned it into the
estimating right
insurance.
now, it'll probably be in the range of about $1.5 million.
Yes.
Overall, that'll include the rest of some of that initial remediation and drying efforts, but yeah, it's
Is there anything that can be done to prevent it in the future, like having water monitors if that's a wet area or?
we're looking at different things. I think there's is it, what's the cost? And one of those things you put in monitors, those aren't perfect. A lot of false alarms and take a lot of labor to maintain as well, but we're looking at different things. We're looking at other options for it. I'd like to think we learn from our mistakes and create new ones instead of repeating the same ones. But we also want to be very careful when we create the new ones to not make them any worse and hopefully make them simpler to maintain. So as we rebuild, we are talking about different things.
The most immediate upgrade is having a different sort of fitting with that water pipe connection on every fitting in this building and on our future construction.
So you're replacing a bunch of fittings too that haven't failed.
Yeah.
Yeah, we will be. And part of that was there was damage to some of the cabinet work. So we have to rebuild, and we had to move everything away anyhow. So we had to rebuild that section. So in order to get the basic water cleanup, we had to redo a chunk of that anyhow. So
Well, thank you for the update.
yeah. The other exciting thing is we are, as I mentioned earlier, we are weeks away from taking over the ITech building and trying to move in there. I spent most of today doing what is called the start of a punch walk. So that's where we walk through and we pick apart all the little goobers of paint on the wall and bad caulk jobs and dings in the window or whatever else. And we're going through with the architect and the design team and the owner trying to pick it apart and make sure they get everything done. Trying to get everything contracted for moving. The iTech is going to be a really unique move because we have some very large machines with CNC machines and some very specialized machines there, as well as a lot of construction and contracting, just table saws and all kinds of things like that. And a machine shop and all of that. So some very unique moves to try and pull that off over winter break for the most part. So we also have a very tight time frame to do that between and making sure students don't miss out on anything along the way. Everything seems to be going as good as I can hope. Moving forward with that. What I saw today gave me great promise that we'll be ready to see students on come January, and be able to offer some really exciting classes there. And then the other project we're working on is getting ready to start construction, bid out and complete documentation for the science lab building 16 upgrades, which is one of those things that I will say when I first walked this campus, when I saw those science labs, they reminded me of my high school science labs. And yes, I have a little gray hair, so those science labs are a little old. But really going to be doing some wonderful things there. We'll be talking to the board about that, getting some early procurement here soon and getting going on that. So that's the big highlights of what's going on. The rest, I hope you can read yourself. Any questions?
I do have a question about the science building.
Yeah.
Do you yet, or when in the future will you have a GMP on that building?
We are in the process of completing the construction documents and getting it in. We are intending to have that completed in early December, and it'll go out to bid at that point. So we'll have the GMP probably in January is where
So you're doing the GMP after it's bid out?
Yes, we are at this point. We've been working with them on an estimate. We do have we will be taking an early procurement package forward, but we were so close. We decided to go ahead and wait. They've been Fortis Construction is the contractor on that. On health professions, we did go out for an early GMP, and we talked about it on this one, and really wanted the nature of a science lab building. We wanted better documentation when we went to bidding to reduce the potential for changes. There's just an awful lot of details when you're doing fume hoods and the types of plumbing and ventilation requirements. We really wanted strong documents when we finalized the contract. So.
We haven't talked about this, I don't believe, but I'm assuming that you spend a lot of time in planning with the faculty to figure out what it is you want to get done in these kinds of technical spaces.
Yes, yeah, we meet, with the science projects, we have met with every faculty in their room several times. What are they doing? Meet with, and then also meet with the lab assistants, and the administration as well. What do they see for changes in the program in the future? Where do they see other opportunities? So, but it is truly sitting down and understanding how do they teach, and that's a challenging piece sometimes to get it all to work.
Right. Thank you. Other questions? Tom, go ahead.
I think that covers my manager's update. We are after 7, so I beg for forgiveness that we're running a little bit long here. But I think the last thing on the agenda is my quarterly status report, which
Yes,
goes
please.
out, which always seems to draw a little discussion. And what I'll say here is, again, I want to emphasize, if you read the response to information request, one of the things I talk about is these are really funding allocations more so than specific projects. Well, it sometimes is, reads, the Building 32 building is very much an individual building, but there are also always additional projects around it on a campus here. And I think that's one of those things that is different about campus in a college capital improvements than a lot of business. Businesses focus in on a very specific improvement to achieve a different set of production or something of that nature. Campuses tend to work in a broader spectrum. And we're also a long-term, whereas a business tends to look at how quick can I write this off and deduct it, whether it's a 7-year asset or a 10 or 12 or 15-year asset or whatever it is, they parse it out that way. Very different as an architect, when I work with businesses that way. Whereas a campus is, we're going to get to remodel this in 60 years, maybe, whether it needs it or not, kind of thing. And, generally they do by then, but it's very much a long-term investment. And it's also a different type of dynamic here at the community college, because we need to be adaptable to the different education needs as businesses change. So, going through this, Terry, you had asked earlier about, administration expense. The first line on this is bond administration expenses. If you look later on in my final pie chart, there's some other things that goes up to a higher number of 4% because I look at planning and design, where I have some other things that there's some notes off to the side on these that are that talk about, that we did planning for the public safety building. And I put that under planning design as an overhead cost more than a specific project cost. So there are a couple of things like that. There's another one that talks about our OTEC consultant which is ongoing consulting under plan and facility standards. Again, we hired people, that is an administrative line item that we also use that build things against when we updated our construction contracts, hired a group of people to look at that, some architects to kind of proof out that. So we're trying to keep those things together. I'll also talk a little bit about my red, yellow, green, and I appreciate the desire for this exactitude of metrics. But I think one of the things in construction is I've been doing this for almost 40 years now, and there's a gut feeling of whether it's working or not. And I think it's appropriate for a manager to be able to say, I feel a little uneasy about this. And when I've worked with in past higher education institutions, that's kind of where I came up with this red, yellow, green indicator with some other consultants. And it's just, again, there's a little bit of science behind it, but it's also just very much an experience indicator that, I have some concerns that, this clinic may not be on schedule, and you should be aware of that. Or those types of things. So
are you telling us now that that's the case?
the health clinic that is being done by the county, although Jennifer tells me did they occupy it yet?
They are
Okay.
open.
Okay, they are open. That's an update from when I put this together. So that's why it was only a yellow concern. It wasn't a panic. And in my things, I talked about some of those things like the mobile manufacturing and cybersecurity lab. We're still working out the scope. We feel we're comfortable with the budget that's needed there, but again, that's working with faculty about exactly the best way to pull it off and looking at suppliers for the right types of things that we want to do, and reaching out to the community for the cybersecurity lab. What's best for all of that? And it just takes time.
And I assume that on these kind of technical projects, you also consult with outside people who are trying to do similar work in other places.
Yeah.
To understand what their experience is and what they would suggest. I mean, I'm assuming that a fair number of your faculty are used to working with what they've got, and they're not experts in what to upgrade either.
And that's often a challenge. Why I say we've met with faculty multiple times, because it's first is what do you want or what do you think, and it's hard to get out of that. You're sitting in your home and you're used to your TV being in that location, and your kitchen is laid out this way, and is there a better way? It's getting faculty to reach out to their compatriots around at schools around here. We do bring in, whether it's design professionals or other technical advisors. That's part of with the cybersecurity lab is one that we are, both from the academic side as well as our IT group, are reaching out to understand what those needs are. Because the IT group can go out and go, hey, what are the technologies and what are the things out there? Whereas the faculty can reach out to other groups that say, hey, how are you teaching this? What are you seeing out there? What is the demand? Where's the hole in that? Maybe is the other part that we can fit with some of these newer programs. So.
Yeah, and of course, the cybersecurity that you're talking about is changing every day, isn't it? I look at the ITEC building and realize that it was built purposely so that it could be changed on the fly.
Well, yeah.
And I'm assuming you're trying to do similar things with these other projects as well.
Yeah. To an extent, and it's a balance. I think you can design flexibility to the nth degree, and it doesn't work well for anything. I've found at times too. But trying to tone it in. iTech is the machine shop's the perfect example that we designed it. We're on our third lead faculty member since we started the design. Rewriting a lot of things, changes in machining that have been donated, so we're putting in different machines than we thought we were going to. Drove the architects crazy, but it worked at the same time. So
That's part of your job, isn't it? To drive them crazy? Sorry, bad joke. The
Hey.
other,
I'm one of those.
yes, yes, that's true. Other comments, questions for Tom? And I'm not sure
Yeah.
you finished yet. I don't want to interrupt.
No, I'll open it to questions so we can keep moving.
Yeah.
Tom, can you bring up your quarterly status report with Scott
Let
all
me
the,
see if I can share my
it's on
screen.
page 1?
Yeah, let me see what I can do here to
Is
share.
that the one with the numbers that are too small
Oops.
to read?
Oh, Jennifer's got it. Thank you, Jennifer.
Okay,
That is the one with the numbers that are too small to read. I've got my
That-
magnifying glass out. I still can't read
Yeah.
it.
That's what
that's
happens
it.
when I try and give you lots of information.
So if I understand correctly, on the iTech building, you would say it's what, 99% complete or close to it? Is that what I heard? Or
Construction we are still, then we're still procuring, moving and equipment and furnishings as they're being,
Okay.
but yeah, we're pretty close to that.
yeah, so this is why I guess I was saying, or I'll still advocate for having an additional column besides just percent contracted, is because you'll see there it says we're at 92%, which is truly the percent contracted. But yet up on the building, that column is actual project status. It's 100%. So that was where I was saying these are off. That I'm not sure. I mean that's good because it's showing that we have almost $4.5 million that we probably we haven't encumbered or expensed that we can use for other projects, if I'm reading this correctly.
I'm hopeful, knock on wood
Yeah.
here, and
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that was why
Yeah.
I was confused when I saw the health building said it was 100%, when really it's percent contracted is more like about 96%. And I would really still like to see a third column or additional column that says project completion. So we know, are we at 96% of the project being completed? I mean, it doesn't have to be an exact, but we should know. I mean, you probably have a pretty good idea as to how much, so are we going to take more of that 4,300,000 to complete, or
Well,
what?
that's hard for me to say because that's part of where I'm talking with the administration as we come forward. There are things that we held back on some on this, is it more appropriate to invest in more equipment? Or do we have other funding for it? Is it appropriate to move it somewhere else so that we can buy it? And that is the hard conversations that Kara's here somewhere, but Jennifer's here as well. And we talk about those things. And is it are we finding other sources? That's some of the other things that as we buy, I said we've gotten some donations for equipment. Was not expected, but that's when you get $1 million machine donated to you that I don't have to buy.
So on that proposal to the board this month, I think I just quickly glanced at it. It was like around $8 million. Is that with additional things, or are you just reallocating from some of this money that you expect to have, or where are those coming from?
It is projects that are allocated across this one. So
Okay.
it's just the ones that haven't been, they're at the 0% or a very small percentage completed or started. There's some that have funds allocated, but a very small amount. And it's just a lot of it, if Jennifer or Kara want to step in here too, but it's things we want to understand what those academic and priorities are at the end here. We took off early and we bit off the big projects that were academic priorities 5 years ago. when the bond was proposed. We've got a very different administration right now in personnel and a different marketplace. Got to remember this was put together before COVID, and the academic marketplace has changed considerably. I don't think anybody would have believed that we would have held. We're at 40% online at this point, and it's held solid. I think that would have been an aspirational goal, but it allows us to do different things. So.
Right.
So that has implications, what you just said has implications for IT and for the number of classrooms you need, I suppose, or the size of them. I'm making that up. I don't know that, but
That's what we're looking at. I think all of that, yeah. And that's part of, the buildings we have done are very hands-on. Yeah. You don't learn to do clean your teeth without sticking your fingers in somebody's mouth at some point, I guess is, you don't learn to draw blood without getting together and doing it. The same thing in construction and some of these trades. You've got to work on the machines. Simulations are great to a point that you could do on your home computer, but there's a point where you got to get in there and pound the nail or turn the screw or whatever. And that's what these two big buildings are all about.
right. Thank
And
you. Other
with the science lab,
other questions, Tom, do you have other comments you wanted to make?
Other questions or?
Other questions at this point? Is it reasonable for me to invite people to continue to raise issues by email, which I assume become part of the record for the committee? Is that a reasonable thing for me to suggest in between meetings? Okay.
Yeah, and we'll place email questions and answers to information requests in the next meeting packet.
Right.
And
Right.
respond to them more quickly than that if we can too.
We'll try. Please
Yeah.
send them to Amy Scan.
Yes.
I think, and you're welcome to copy Jennifer and I on that, but please make sure Amy gets those because she is the one that will hold us all together.
Well, she keeps the record.
Yes.
Yes. Yeah. And that's part of the requirements for public meeting law and for just keeping track of what we're talking.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. I'm looking at this and at this agenda, and what it says is closing items at this point. So I want to make sure that we've covered the business we need to cover tonight before we get to the closing items. Is there anything else that we've missed? I recall that there was a comment early on about finishing a conversation because we ran over time. I don't know if you want to do that or not. I think my recollection is it was Jennifer's piece early, but it may be that we actually did finish it. Okay, closing items. Next dates for upcoming meetings, those are set. Is there anything else? I guess not. All right. Thank you. This has been a great meeting. I have learned a bunch. I hope that we're able to continue working on the information that various members of the committee feel we need to have in order to complete our work. I really appreciate the thoroughness with which this is getting done, even if we're still missing some of the data that it may be that we need. And I have to say that I am truly impressed with the work that I've been able to look at myself, and how well it's going, despite the fact that water likes to flow when it's not stoppered properly. Anything else for us tonight? Say now, because we're about to adjourn.
Yes.
All right. Thank you so much. The Bond Oversight Committee for Lane Community College is adjourned until our next meeting.
Thank you.
Thank you.